It's Real Talk's 2025 Thanksgiving Special. See which classics score highest on today's show. Lila, the Silver Screen Sugar Glider, returns to review Silver Linings Playbook. LA director Keith Kennedy and I give thanks for planes, trains, and automobiles. And one of New York's funniest up-and-coming comedians, Matt Summerstein, returns to score Knives Out. Now please, leave a nice comment or 5-star review and subscribe to find out who killed Mr. Plummer.
Real Talk is powered by Real Digital. If you work for a brand or agency producing content, keep it real by setting up a consultation at www.realdigital.media to see how your next campaign can come in ahead of schedule and under budget.
In storytelling, there are two main genres, tragedy and comedy, so it's probably no surprise that the film Silver Linings Playbook walks a fine line between the two. Like all good love songs, the film captures the highs of embracing love as well as the pain of recognizing it's behind you, and concludes with a 3-part dance number that is a perfect homage to the picture's story. This adapted screenplay is a classic telling of two American coming-of-middle-age stories intertwining in a romantic comedy whose third act is as suspenseful as it is hilarious. Rather, you're a therapist who doesn't understand betting or an obsessive gambler who loves the birds. It's difficult not to think that some aspect of this film won't connect on some level with anyone who watches it. Bradley Cooper leads this amazing ensemble cast that includes Chris Tucker, Robert De Niro, but it is Jennifer Lawrence that explodes off the screen with equal parts tragic confidence and raw courage. Her beauty is at times as distracting as the whimsical camera moves are, but we the audience, much like Cooper's Pat, must find her irresistible for the film to truly succeed. I saw this film when it was released and enjoyed it as much as a line in college could, but 13 years later, the film's themes hit much differently. But at times so close to home, it calls into question the lampooning of the subject matter. That said, the film is as clever as its characters and seems to appropriately be imperfect. It's always a pleasure when Lila swoops in to review a film, and I'm extra thankful that she made some time today to review Silver Linings Playbook. Lila, happy Thanksgiving, and let me tell you, I can feel the juju shifting ever since you landed.
Happy Thanksgiving, Al. Thanks so much for having me. I hope it's okay. I brought a dish. I can never, ever join a Thanksgiving dinner without bringing something.
Oh, Lila, you're so sweet. It smells amazing. What is it? If I can ask?
Of course you may. Well, I am a sugar glider, so I have a bit of a sweet tooth. So I brought forth today some cranberry ginger sugar cookies for dessert.
Lila, this is so thoughtful. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, my friend.
All of them myself. You and I, if it's one thing we have in common, it is our sweet tooth. But lots of friends are here today. And of course, I'm so glad Alex could come. I see him out there mingling with Mr. Keith Kennedy, who's on today's episode. And I know Keith and Alex do a lot of work together. As is often the case, I like to kind of know when's the first time you saw Silver Linings? Did you watch it recently for the show?
So I have seen it before. I watched it in theaters with my mom when it came out. And then I watched it a few years ago because I migrated to Philadelphia about 7 years ago. And I had this huge kick of watching every film that has to do with or near Philadelphia. And then I watched it in preparation for this. So I'd say I've watched it about 3 times. As a sugar glider who has lived in this area for going into 10 years, now I really know the landscape of it better than the second time that I watched it.
And fun fact, if I'm not mistaken, one Saquon Barkley plays, at least at the time of recording, plays for the Eagles. And he is another alumni of Real Digital. He was in an early shoot for an NFL 100 campaign, wasn't playing for the Eagles at the time. So I'll digress. We won't get into all that. But
be playing for that other team, the other team that may have been a ruining team at the end of this movie or in the end of this movie.
He may have been. He may or may not have been.
Was he cheering Excelsior as he was hitting a touchdown? Yeah.
Friend of the show, Nick Galante, who's a wonderful New York-based DP. He was very happy that day that he got to meet Mr. Saquon. And all to say that there's lots of, again, overlapping things, but I'm a mascot, so I'll plug away if you don't stop me. So I'm going to shut up.
Plug.
I'm glad we're both sort of aligned in terms of how many times we've seen the film, and you know how it goes, Lila. You're a pro here. We start out by talking about plot. It's sort of your classic will they, won't they romantic comedy, but it's really, just steeped in exceedingly dark themes, OCD, various addictions from sex to gambling, codependency issues. I mean,
Yeah.
this could be called the therapist playbook, if not the silver lining
Yeah.
playbook.
It's everyone's trying to find their silver lining. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Near the halfway point of the movie, it did start to drag a little. It did start to feel maybe a little meandering. But by the time the third act kicks off, and I did look, and there was literally 30 minutes left when they set up this idea of there's the game, we have the parlay, it's the same day. Jennifer Lawrence has this amazing kind of monologue. We'll get into that where she sets everybody in their place. That point moving forward, I'm totally in. And it's not a lot of times in a movie where like the third act really picks up and like gets me back into it. I'm just curious, did you have a similar sort of experience watching the film?
What I do appreciate about the plot is it is the classic. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. The thing that you were looking for was right in front of you all along. It's about the friends we made along the way. This was one of the first modern crack at discussing mental health in society. Everyone is nosy, everyone is gossipy. So that part of that makes sense. Tiffany, what she was able to give to Pat, and then near that third act, when Nikki does end up coming to the competition, she's left with like, I put in all this work and for what? Like just for another person to leave me. What I found fascinating was yes, this like, how do we talk about mental health in 2012? What I do appreciate is that this was one of the first main stage takes on how to approach that, in this very Americanized family, like, they're just like us, or like they would be just like us kind of thing.
There's this sort of like culture clash inside of the generations where you have Pat and Tiffany who are younger and they almost overshare. They've been through so much,
Yes.
experienced this trauma, and they're trying in real time to sort of process it, and they don't really care anymore about how that affects other people, or at least how their processing of their trauma affects other people. Whereas most of the folks in their lives, whether it's Pat Sr., Robert De Niro, Pat's brother, who's played Jake is his name, like they're much more reserved, much more quiet, and they're not so much about sharing and opening. And so I think that, yeah, you see that butting of heads a lot, especially again,
Yeah.
what I believe is more in the middle of the film, which for me kind of bogged it down a bit in terms of plot. Cause I feel like once we get to the third act and we know what the goal is, everything really gets a new
Mhm.
lift and momentum, and it kind of shifts.
Huh.
And I did appreciate that. But I hate saying this, but I do feel like, yeah, this movie could really afford maybe be 20 minutes shorter, just get to the kind of concerted effort,
Yeah, the dance is like one of my favorite scenes in the entire film. It felt like the most honest interpretation of how far they had come as individuals and together. Truly see that they worked at this, but they are not polished, and that is okay. That they are literally dancing to the beat of their own drum. I love the dance part so much, and I love silliness of like, why are they cheering for a fight? Like, this is crazy. It was so heartfelt. I love the third act so much, but I am with you that there was a whole lot of you're crazy, I'm not crazy, you're crazier than me, and then 3 seconds later, like I don't know. I don't. In terms of plot, both Pat, Bradley Cooper's Pat, he is searching for the thing that he thinks he wants the most, and at the end, he kind of gets an opportunity to take the thing that he's wanted this entire time, and realizes that he has a new dream, a new goal, a new person that has lifted him out of the fog in the same way that Jennifer Lawrence's Tiffany has. I think it is a really great first step into films about modern day mental health struggles. I really do appreciate it. Yes.
I've got
I
to
need a number for me.
1 out of 10. How much do you appreciate it?
I appreciate the plot to a 7.
I have locked the 7 in because of the theme of the show today. I'm writing all the scores in gravy. So I have,
Love it.
thank you. That brings us to
Yeah.
characters and performances. I'll just say right out of the gate, one of Al's favorite movies is Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown. So it's always very exciting to see a reunion of Chris Tucker and Robert De Niro. Lots of other great casting choices in this movie, not the least of which, of course, is Bradley Cooper. This was one of the first times, not necessarily was in a leading role, but again, really leading a strong ensemble cast. I mean, this is a heavy hitting cast if ever there was.
Yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence, the year prior to this, come out with Winter's Bones, so she was certainly on the map. But this was definitely, I mean, I remember this was almost like a coming out party. Like, if you didn't know who Jennifer Lawrence was before this movie, you definitely knew after.
She rocked the early 2010s. Like you couldn't, she was in absolutely everything. Like no stone was unturned without her being there. I will say that I think I was a bigger fan of the performances than I was of the characters altogether. I do really want to shout out the casting director for pairing Julia Stiles and Jennifer Lawrence as sisters because dynamite casting, and then also dynamite casting to Shea Wiggum and Bradley Cooper. I hope I said his name right. I absolutely buy that they're brothers.
And they're all recognizable faces too. So it's not just that it's like, oh, they look like they could be sibling. It's like, oh wait, I've seen these people for years and I'm still
Yeah.
buying that they're siblings. When you talk about ensemble cast, there really is like
Yeah.
any way you mix it, you get really interesting energies and reactions and responses.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of, if any of the movie was actually improv, but it does feel very loose. Some of my favorite moments, maybe probably my favorite moment in the movie is when Jennifer Lawrence has her, again, I hesitate to call it her monologue, but her sort of moment when she just sort of puts Pat Sr. in his place and explains how her injection into their lives has actually been for the benefit of the Eagles. And that scene is so funny and the way she holds it down. And even there's a moment where she's like, yeah, as she like drinks the beer, I laugh so hard. And I do think a lot of these characters are, I'll just say this, who pop up again in like American Hustle, you know, when you compare the two films, I feel like this movie is way more saturated and there, I don't know, the performances feel a little more inspired. Where in that movie, it feels like maybe some of the cast is kind of phoning it in. Whereas this, it feels again, really, it felt like a cast who saw this movie as an opportunity, I think is what I'm trying to say. And I kind of think everybody hit it out of the park.
Did Limitless come out before or after this? Do you know?
Oh, that, yeah, it did.
Before.
Yeah, it was before.
No way. Because Bradley Cooper and Robert De Niro were in Limitless together. I think it was a very limited relationship in it. Like it wasn't father son. So this was Bradley Cooper and Robert De Niro's first intimate relationship explored. And the lore behind it that I found really fascinating was when Inside the Actor Studio was a thing. If you can find it on YouTube. It's really quite fascinating that what this becomes. There's a point in the panel where they let the students, raise their hand and ask their questions to the actor in question being interviewed. And one of the students that raises his hand is Bradley Cooper, and he asks, I believe, like such a insanely specific question that it leaves Robert De Niro like fumbling for an answer. The lore beginning from a student asking a question to now playing his son, that is something that does tickle me. Some of my things that I actually disagree with you, not all the way, but that specific scene with Tiffany going off on the stats and probabilities of when the Phillies teams did well when Tiffany and Pat were together.
Right.
Something that I got hung up on was that earlier in the film, she was like, we don't bring any sports into this house. Like she tosses the newspaper out. And I think what rattled me was I was like, why was she so against sports if she knew all these stats and stuff? Like it's not ever explained that like, oh, maybe her husband who passed away was really big into sports and something she reluctantly became really into as a way to cope with it. I was hung up on no sports talk whatsoever. She's upset that he goes to an Eagles game instead of their practice. She didn't want him to half up the day, and then he meant to, but then he got in trouble, so he couldn't come to dance practice at all. And then she just magically knows all the stats and stuff. That's where that felt a bit like Cool Girl, that she just knew all this stuff, and then she sips her beer afterwards, and I'm like, all right, like
Earlier, there is a scene where uh, Bradley Cooper's Pat kind of explains this juju concept, and she
right.
sort of is like, "Oh, you think I'm?" And he's like, "Oh, it's not that it's you. It's just me and my dad, and how it's born." Because she does have a moment when they ask, when he's like, "How'd you know all that?" And she goes, "I did my research." When he said it's important to my dad, so I'm doing it, it kind of became important to her. And she wanted to be able to prove that, like, hey, I'm not the problem here. And I think, especially when we find out that, like, she's behind the letters, it does show that she is pretty calculating. You know, she does think about these things. She does spend time.
I will say, I think I missed that line. I think I
Fair enough.
completely missed. I did my research line. I think I was too distracted by the beer sip and just all the stats. Like I'm shedding. I'm shedding my skin now. I'm so sweaty that like I completely missed that line. So maybe I'll that's why I didn't write down my numbers yet, because I just wanted to make sure I talk it out with my friend, and I can
Hey, there you
that definitely helps it a little bit more. But one of the other factors that I really couldn't get my mind around, and I'm saying this as like such a big Chris Tucker stan. His character was so underdeveloped, and everyone I could see Ortiz's Ronnie. You know, he is married to Veronica, who is like a friend of Nikki's as well as Tiffany's sister. You know, he has his own character. He has his own struggles. He has his own thing going on. Even Jake has his own struggles, his own thing going on. Dr. Patel has his own thing going on. I just felt like Danny, just his entire agency was just to build Pat up, and you could have just not had Danny in the film. And I like, yes, like he's like a big, you know, friend of his that was in the hospital with him, but in terms of helping his growth, I didn't see it. His character, I didn't know how it really advanced Pat's story, and I didn't really know like what his own agency was. A waste of an incredible talent.
I really appreciated the performance, which is not an argument to what you're saying. I think we both appreciate Chris Tucker, and I can appreciate that. Yeah. Well, I got to know then. 1 out of 10. What would you give characters and performances?
I'm gonna give it an 8 for that. For Chris Tucker to be Chris Tucker, having fifth bill, and his character is so underdeveloped. That was really disappointing, but I will give it an 8.
And it's hard to write an 8 in Gravy. The 7 was a lot easier, but the 8.
Use your paw. Use the nail of your paw.
If someone wants to eat this later, I don't want to say, but maybe I'll just eat it. Maybe I'll just eat all of these scores. Well, that brings us to visual storytelling, which would be appropriate if I was eating my scores. That would be a very visual.
There you go.
Indeed. There's kind of two things that I want to talk about when we talk about visual storytelling. One is just the distinct kind of usage of these really sweeping camera movements. And, you know, whenever you you can spin the wheel of filmmaking auteurs, and wherever it lands, you're going to be able to find some distinct camera moves that auteur likes to use. Obviously, on this show, we've talked a lot about Mr. Spike Lee, who uses the double dolly shot. Even Paul Thomas Anderson, who we get into in this season, he loves a nice just sort of slow pan over. And one thing that Mr. David O. Russell seems to use in a lot of his movies, and boy does he use it in this, are just these super sweeping push-ins or pullbacks. Oftentimes it just feels like the camera operator is just running with the camera about a foot off the floor. And I don't know, you mentioned earlier upon multiple viewings how maybe some of the scenes in the film haven't aged so well. I think if I had to identify a criticism for me, that really has not aged well for me. That becomes increasingly more distracting as I watch.
Yeah, I feel like it's such a wonderfully specific thing that you're picking up on, because I remember from my first viewing, one of the camera moves that I remembered so vividly and so clearly was the realization that Tiffany is the one that wrote the letter, and the camera just run up, push up into Bradley's face. I remember, you know, in 2010, I was a 19-year-old sugar glider, and I was like, you know, the absolute cinema meme where I was like, oh my God, like it's hitting him. It's finally hitting him. And I do agree that it read a little on the nose. I think maybe 13 years later, I do agree that, yeah, some of the camera moves, and I think also the last kiss at Jewelers Row, and that's the kiss that they share on the streets. For anyone listening that is not familiar with the streets of Philadelphia, they are kissing at a place called Jewelers Row. It is quite literally a small block that is full of jewelry stores, and it is very picturesque. It's a great place to walk down. They have that kiss, and the camera off had like a parachute on him, and they just like ripped him backwards. And there it is. Not awful, but I think, yeah, like it doesn't read any sort of subtlety. It's just like, oh right, yeah.
And it's just so consistent. Like even that moment that you talk about where he has the realization, I think from like a cinema standpoint, that is a really appropriate moment for that.
For
But
sure.
because it happens so often, and
Yeah.
because when there are these appropriate moments for it, the kiss at the end, it has to be then so exaggerated to kind of even stand out that, yeah, it's
Right.
almost like you set this pace you have to outdo. And it just, I digress. The other thing I want to talk about is, of course, the dance sequence at the end. It's not every day you watch a movie and you get a summary, a movie that sort of summarizes itself, its story, everything with an actual dance scene. It's gritty and it's them and it's perfect. And the fact that they
Yes.
score a five and that's the win, it's just so wonderful. But I mentioned in my open, it's very much three parts. I think the three songs that they use are very indicative of the three acts of the movie. And
Yeah.
at the end, the last third is a jazz piece, which of course they kind of botch this big move they've been practicing, but they sort of play it off. And it very much is
As
just like
best as we can.
jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's such a great metaphor for life and everything. I obviously am kind of
Absolutely.
glowing over it, but I wanna tee you up and get your thoughts on the dance scene and kind of.
Absolutely. I remember the first time watching it, I was like so ready for this Dancing with the Stars as two regular people trying their best, which is like what every act of their dance sequence is like comes across as this. These are two people who are trying their best. Every time I watch it, I love it more and more. I genuinely love it so much. I feel like even to the choreography from the first song, it's them kind of close together, but trying to find the same rhythm. And then once they get into like pop punk alternative song, them like really letting loose and like just going for gold. And then, yeah, I also love, I fucking love West Side Story so much. So, like, my mom and I were like holding hands, just like, oh my God, like they actually put it in. And now it's them like really like they get closer and closer through their choreography through the whole thing and yeah visually telling the story of the three acts is like it's done so beautifully through that dance but like the whole metaphor of the running like it's something that they each do on their own it's something they like to do alone that they end up and then they kind of stumble upon doing it together. But the metaphor of running is like, yeah, a form of exercise, but also a form of how they handle their problems. So the two of them find themselves to be runners in all sense of the form. And then at the very end, when the final confrontation of like, it's you who I love, not her. They're still running to be had. And I just really liked, I mean, I still always find it funny where someone's reaction to, hey, is a runaway. Like, it
Oh,
still
it's
always gets me. It's so
no.
funny.
I'm glad you brought that up because yeah, there's a moment after one of their dance practices where Jennifer Lawrence's Tiffany is like undressing. And I don't remember off the top of my head if it's clear to her that she can be seen. So I don't, it's not necessarily that she's trying to seduce him, but he can see her. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that Jennifer Lawrence is absolutely stunning. And
Gorgeous.
it just cuts to him on his feet running away.
You're
I
running.
thought that was so funny because it's like,
That was really
oh
funny.
my God, yeah. I think
I
any,
gotta get out of here.
yeah, it's.
I owe you a number, don't I, my
You
friend?
do.
I will say visual storytelling. I mean, they really played up the whole like Pennsylvania suburbia, the running, the dancing. I'm going to give it an eight. I'm going to give it an eight.
That brings us to use of sound. Again, this is a movie that I've used the word a few times, whimsical. It's definitely kind of again, this story that is about, we keep saying mental health, but it is a really funny movie. I mean, it is a comedy. It's not making light of these things, but it is having fun with them. And I think the soundtrack is pretty appropriate. It's more of a pop soundtrack. There's a lot of recognizable songs. Girl from North Country, which is one of my all-time favorite songs. But there's also a pretty solid mix of music. It's not like, again, I just mentioned Girl from North Country, which is a classic Western song. There's also White Stripes, which we mentioned. I mean, there's a lot of different music that's mixed in, and not to mention, of course, the key element of Bradley Cooper's sort of trauma being brought back by hearing a very specific
Oh my
song.
goodness.
So that song in and of itself is kind of a character.
I will say that I feel like from my, few appearances I've made on this show so far, like I've my evolution of ranking sound has definitely changed around a bit. Because to be honest, like I wasn't sure how to rank it when I first started, hanging around with you, Al. So I feel like my time in the jungle, going through some of these films that you, my friend, I've gotten a better grasp on how I view the use of sound. And for me, this I did not realize how integral this soundtrack was to my life at that point. I never heard of Alabama Shakes until this movie, and I remember I was obsessed with that album. The upbeatness of Hold On, and the entire message of this song is to hold on even when things aren't feeling right, just hold on, but the whole thing of it being upbeat, I felt like that was so effective in that juxtaposition, this whole dark romantic comedy of this upbeat song that's about holding on when you're not feeling well, and he's mentally unwell, and he's scaring the shit out of his old boss. Like just even using that in that part. My Sherry Moore is a character in this film, has a very important presence. It's never okay when he hears the song. Sometimes he hears it and it's not even playing. And then going into their actual dance routine, most dance competitions you need a set of songs to dance to, so those songs need to be the right choices. And as you perfectly put it, took the words right out of my mouth, the choices of songs do highlight like almost like a little bit of a synopsis of each act. Very memorable soundtrack to me. Very memorable sound effects. The sound of the book hitting the grass, the sound of Robert De Niro like punching Bradley Cooper. Use of sound, I give it a 9. I really, really enjoyed the use of sound. I felt like it was well done and well executed for sure.
Lila, it's locked in. The 9 a little bit easier to write than Gravy. I told you it's hard to write an 8 in Gravy, and you immediately gave another 8. You're gonna find out soon. A lot of our scores are very, very similar, if not exactly the
Very
same.
cool.
But that brings us, as always, to the end here, which is themes, is what we're gonna talk about. I feel like some of the, dare I say, obvious ones in this are addiction, failure, manipulation, and then also just sort of resenting the opportunity to kind of be better and love yourself, because
Hmm.
that means it's going to immediately result in someone loving you, and sort of the fears around that. And you already kind of said it earlier, but what I wanted was in front of me all along, and not being able to see that. And let's face it, this movie is about two gorgeous human beings who probably shouldn't have any problem falling in love,
You guys
but
should be fine. Yeah.
it's Bradley Cooper's Pat's obsession with loving someone who hurt him, because I think, like all of us who have been through trauma, all of us who have maybe been through divorce, you can so easily idolize the love that doesn't exist anymore, because that's kind of all you have left, is this memory of something that probably isn't that honest of a memory. And this is a very clear representation of, he doesn't remember the most recent thing that happened in the relationship. He remembers the good times, and that's preventing him from seeing this incredible character, this incredible human right in front of him who clearly loves him.
I think one of the only themes that I thought of that I didn't hear you mention is there's a bit of a conversation, or a bit of a generational trauma. You mentioned it top of the episode about Pat Senior and Jake's characters of being sort of this buttoned up men of the time. Keep that shit to yourself. Like don't release that out. But clearly Pat Senior deals with some form of OCD. It's more than superstition of wearing the jersey on the game day. Like he is stroking this handkerchief in this very specific way. Only the remotes have to be facing a certain way. He's also dealing with mental health issues, but he is a man of a different time, of a different generation, that like no way would you address that. No way would you do anything about that.
He can't, he's not capable, but he's still going to push through it. Because I want to say this, what the movie does really well is it presents all of these characters who on the outside appear to be doing really well and are super unhappy, and it gives us two leads who on the outside seem just crazy and outcast and don't have their shit together, and they find true happiness. And I think that's a really nice message and takeaway, because a
It
lot of
is.
us are not the premier members of society, and a lot of us are often looking at others, especially maybe on social media, and seeing how it looks like everybody's doing well, but the reality is a lot of people are like, oh, old Ronnie there.
With that said, and I want to say the irony of the two crazy people, the two mentally unwell, are easily the most communicative and most honest of how they're absolutely feeling. Meanwhile, everyone else is happy on the outside and trying to get through their own thing. So I feel like in what you said, like, addictions, failure, the clashing of generational trauma, I think they were accomplished. And so in that regard, I'm gonna give theme. I think I'm gonna give it a 10.
The 10, the
Yeah.
rare Lila 10. I love it.
It's a rare 10.
The 10 is locked in. It took me a little longer because I had to write 2 digits in gravy that time, but all of the scores are locked in. So I have a total, and you can let me know how thankful you are for this score. You gave the plot a 7, the characters and performances an 8, visual storytelling an 8, the use of sound a 9, and the highest score, I'm realizing they got higher and higher, and the theme a 10 for a total of 84, which is a solid A to A minus. So what would you give it? I mean, it is Thanksgiving, so I feel like an A minus would be,
I do think I'm going to keep the A. The A is great. The A is great.
To your 7, I gave the plot a 9, which is a little bit high. I mean, there was a moment that I almost gave the plot a 10, but I did knock it back because, like I said, it does kind of drag in the middle. But I also have to remember I've watched this film 3 times. Characters and performances to your 8, I did give them a 9 as well. The performances, I think, there's so many great ones. So I gave it a 9, just knocked back a little. Visual storytelling, dead tie. We each gave it an 8. Same with the use of sound. We each gave it a 9. Theme, I gave it an 8.5 to your 10. I feel like they're really strong themes. I feel like they're explored really well. But at the end of the day, I feel like the movie does just kind of summarize itself in the way that the genre of romantic comedy dictates, which I don't mind because I think that's a great summary, but it does feel, I don't know, less organic and more contrived, but I mean that in the nicest way. That's why it's an 8.5. The total, to your 84, I gave it an 87, so just a little bit higher.
Wow.
To your A, I gave it an A. So yeah, I think we're right on the same page here.
We're in the same ballpark.
Lila, there's so much to be thankful for, and especially here on Real Talk, let's face it. But I am extremely thankful for you and all of the episodes that you've done, all the episodes that you will continue to do, and I'm
Yes,
so happy
sir.
that you and Alex could come through the jungle today. And because I was afraid maybe he wouldn't come, and then you'd go home and you'd find him in the shower with like a history professor, and
Oh
then
my
we have to beat the shit out of him, and then we wouldn't have Lila for 8 months because she'd be doing time upstate at a loony bin. No, I'm kidding. I didn't think that would.
This is why he came to the party, because we were making sure that's not what I walk home to.
Like when we were driving off, there was a history professor rounding the block that I
History professor with tenure, Al, with tenure.
can't be trusted. One of my first appearances on camera was in a little piece called Real Discovery, and it was edited by your lovely husband. So we always very proud of Alex, and would never assume that he's doing anything other than studying.
History
the
teachers
history of
with
the world.
tenure don't do nothing for him. Not at all.
He's a one sugar glider kind of shit.
Yes, yes, he is. He's that kind of sugar glider, y'all.
I can't believe I've made it this whole review and haven't had one of the cookies you brought. So I'm going to tear into those now. I want to make sure that you go out and get some food and mingle before I get into the next review. But Lila, again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you as always. And go Birds. I'm trying to think of a way to end this, but I don't want Jimmy. I don't want that to go to his head. We're talking.
Well, right now we're talking Silver Linings Playbook, and it is Go Birds all day, every day through this film. It should be fine.
Exactly. Well, you know how those toucans are. They got big.
They are very, them toucans. Oh, yeah, that go straight to his head.
Lila, again, like I said, it's great to have you. I want you to go eat some delicious, we have actual gravy out there for you to put on mashed potatoes. I'm not just using all of it to do scores here today. But regardless, thank you for coming. Happy Thanksgiving. And until next time, go Birds.
Go Birds.
Platinum Plastic isn't just a proud sponsor of Real Talk, they're also the home for all our new designs and merchandise. Follow Platinum Plastic on Redbubble to see all our A-plus gear. That's Platinum Plastic on Redbubble for all your Real Talk merch.
Regardless of your age, you've probably grown up hearing about certain films that are classics. And as a lion that was born in the 80s and grew up in the 90s, the names John Candy and Steve Martin held as much weight as any comedy duo you could book, so 1987's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was always spoken of in high acclaim. When I was putting together today's holiday playlist, I thought this John Hughes joint would be a perfect addition to the cornucopia, as it's not only a scrumptious slice of its time, it also lampoons perhaps one of Thanksgiving's most celebrated traditions of enduring horrendous travel to make it home in time for turkey. So today we must decide if this 1987 Abbott and Costello romp is something to be thankful for, or if it's better left at the back of the fridge with your uncle's candy corn casserole. I'm definitely thankful for my guest reviewer, director Keith Kennedy, who I have in fact traveled with, but never shared a bed. Mr. Kennedy, thank you so much for making your way here today from LA. And do you mind me asking, what was your means of transportation?
Well, happy Thanksgiving, Al. And after seeing this movie, I think just good old-fashioned walking is probably the safest and most reliable.
Yeah, you can't beat that, that's for sure. You have a beautiful family, and you left them for a few hours to come here today on Thanksgiving, so it means everything to me that you'd make the time. And I don't want to waste it, and I have to ask, as this is your first time being on the show, you are, I can confirm, a wonderful director. We've shared several sets together. And when I was watching this film, I was very excited to hear what your thoughts were on it, because it has kind of a weird range to it. We'll get into if that range is good or bad. When was the first time you saw Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
The first time I saw Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was like 3 nights ago in preparation for this, believe it or not. Huge John Hughes fan. I like both Steve Martin and John Candy considerably. I knew about it the same way you talked about it, sort of existed in the zeitgeist as sort of like a classic or a must-see. But yeah, I'm pleased to report this was my first viewing. Very, very interesting. I have quite a few thoughts.
Ooh, I'm excited. And as fresh a viewing as the delicious cranberry sauce that you brought. Thank you again for that. It looks
well. I only do fresh, none of that canned garbage. You know what I mean?
Let us know in the comments how you prefer your cranberry sauce. Plot is up first.
There's lots to like. I think the first thing I was struck by is just how much movies have changed in terms of, as a response to the kind of attention deficit problems that we all face just by this deluge of content that we're constantly like assaulted with. Watching a movie even from the 80s, which, you know, for people of our age doesn't seem like that long ago, but like when you watch a movie made for audiences at the time, it's amazing the pacing and the rhythm, how different it feels. And I think because I didn't have a kind of like preconceived notion of this movie from seeing it in my childhood, I was really struck by that first and foremost, just the pacing, the rhythm, and like the technique. But as far as the plot line, Steve Martin working in marketing up in New York, like I thought the way that they set that up, it's funny how little has changed in that regard. I think like from a plot perspective, what I love about this movie, it does an excellent job of sort of kicking the protagonist repeatedly, instead of like kind of making, like watching out to sort of like raise up a protagonist or make sure that, you know, we're painting a certain character in a certain way. It's just like constantly crapping on Steve Martin over and over and over again. And that's indeed like, you know, sort of part of the plot itself. So how much can the human spirit sort of overcome like continued and repeated blows in one fashion or another? So I thought in terms of, you know, that setup for half the movie, at least, maybe even 3/4 of the movie, it's just Steve Martin taking blows. And then to kind of loop it up and finish it the way that it does and sort of give everyone a very happy kind of Hollywood ending that feels, I don't know, it doesn't feel too campy. It doesn't feel too over the top. I mean, I'm born and raised in St. Louis, so I was actually quite surprised that St. Louis plays such a role. Lambert Airport being seen, and just like the actual scene, probably the most memorable scene of the movie, where at least one of my favorites, where he yells at Grace from Ferris Bueller about the rental car happening in St. Louis. I'm very proud of that, actually, believe it or not.
I think it is that sort of classic comedy tradition of taking something that really should be a tragedy in many ways, that we're just choosing to laugh at it and present it in this funny way. I want to ask, and I just happened to stick around till the end of the credits because I was taking some notes and doing some things. There's a post-credit scene. Did you catch it?
I did. I stayed. I don't, for whatever reason, it's failing me now.
So it is indeed just how it starts in the boardroom.
Yes. He's still looking.
Yeah,
He's
the
just still
crane
reviewing
director.
it.
It's just still, but there's a full Thanksgiving dinner behind him, and I don't know, that in many ways was maybe one of the funniest jokes in the movie to me because it totally was unexpected. And as somebody who's spent the last decade in that side of the business, it was very, very, very funny.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because you could almost, I mean you could read in some sort of like, you could read in something profound to any movie, and you could like assign something that maybe it doesn't deserve. But I do feel like after going on this crazy journey to kind of nod at the end that this guy is still in the throes and can't decide at all is kind of this like, I don't know, because it's a holiday movie, because they're trying to in many ways like capture the true essence of Thanksgiving. And like, especially when it comes to family, it's almost like work will still always be there no matter what. And indeed, it hasn't even progressed in any way. So who cares? Like, take the day, take some time, you know?
Right. And why did he, right, like, why did he have to leave at the last minute? He could have left an hour earlier. It ultimately just makes it seem that much more kind of pointless, which again kind of makes the tragedy that much more tragic and therefore the comedy that much more comedic. 1 out of 10, what would you give the plot?
Man leaves New York for home and is continually set back, meets other man, goes through trials and tribulations. Probably a 7, maybe a 6. Because I think yeah, maybe a 6.
The 6 is officially locked in. That is a wonderful, wonderful score. I talked about it in my open. You sort of mentioned it a little bit. John Candy and Steve Martin this is obviously a vehicle for them. A little bit of a pun in there, but as a Steve Martin, John Candy vehicle, how does it work for you?
I was trying to think of like movies that really almost like entirely rely on the characterization, but really like the screen presence of like actual people, like movie stars. Like, and I was thinking like so many of those Barbra Streisand movies like function entirely as a result of it's Barbra Streisand. It doesn't matter. Those miss for me. Who cares? But those totally miss for me. Hot take.
You can say that, but I don't know. We'll
But like Cool Hand Luke with like Paul Newman is like almost, that rides like heavily on his charm. Like so much of it is just his smile as a reaction, you know?
yeah.
And with this one, it's totally, it's like, it's definitely riding on John Candy. And it's funny for me, again, so Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is blind spot for me. I have Steve Martin in all of the other things from like Father of the Bride, like on like way past 10, 15 years past this appearance. So to see him, first of all, excellent physique on Steve Martin, if I may.
Yeah, very notable. 42
looks,
years old at the time of filming. I did look it up, but yeah.
Looks great for 42. For him to play like, you know, the leading man in this role and not so much like the fatherly figure as he kind of occupied after, to very successful degrees. I thought that was interesting. That's like, I don't know. I love John Candy, but I can see how like that's the whole movie rides on it. You know, the entire thing is the charm of John Candy, and like, do you buy him as a, I don't know if lovable loser is right. It's probably not quite right, but it's something like that in the face of Steve Martin being like the everyman, the successful guy, you know, and here's John Candy who's like, you know, kind of just bumping into all the walls around him. Yeah, I buy it. I buy it.
You make a really good point about how sort of likable both guys are, and I think the dynamic that's so important about that is John Candy, on paper, the character of Dell is really annoying. Like, he's really irritating. Anybody would not want to sit next to this guy on a plane, let alone share a hotel bed with him. And he has to kind of be lovable, and he has to sort of walk that tightrope of being annoying enough for Neil or Steve Martin's character to justify being irritated, but can't be so irritating that we don't want to watch him. And in the same way, Steve Martin has to present this character who is frustrated and upset that at times is the bad guy, but is always kind of redeemable. And it's I would imagine a surprisingly difficult tightrope to walk, and these guys do pull it off. I wouldn't describe this as being like a laugh out loud movie. You know, I certainly didn't find myself slapping my knee at any point, but it is a very charming movie. I don't know. And I think that all comes from the performances.
Agree. There are like obviously like clear, like sort of acute examples that like, you know, laugh out loud comedy attempts, you know, like punchlines of certain jokes. But yeah, like in general, it's not like a farce or a romp. that's designed to have a laugh a minute, you know, where you can't really build actual characterization and emotion off of, you know, and I think like this sort of, you know, taking place in Thanksgiving is not the only tie, obviously, to Thanksgiving. Like he's clearly trying to capture the spirit of it. And I think anytime you do something like that, that's a big swing. And I think like, you know, that emotional end and that attempt of all these characters finally coming together in the spirit of this holiday. It's like, are you buying this movie as like a kind of exploration of that tone and that temperament? And I think, you know, I can see how it would be. It's harder. I can see how for a fresh audience, this will just feel like an old movie, and that's unfortunate because I think there's definitely a lot here to kind of like sift through, unfold, and see. The one thing I wanted to mention, and I'm sure we'll probably get to it, but I was really struck by and like I think thankful for the way that this movie captures the tech of the time, which at the time was just technology. Right. But like you were talking about how much of a nightmare it is logistically to get around any time, but by comparison to then, like it's not even close. Like there's that parts where they're scanning the credit card in, you know, the old way where you have to like run it across. I don't even know what that actually does. I guess it like puts it in triplicate or something. I only saw that like one time in my real life. And it's like there's that and then the plane gets canceled and it's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. And there's a line at the payphone because that's the only phone. And like just thinking of the logistical blessings we have today, like comparison. Yeah, that was really, really something.
You know, we didn't really touch on it specifically with the plot, but there is a twist at the end where John Candy's character, it's sort of revealed that the wife that we kind of think he's going home to is unfortunately passed away. I think he's 8 years prior to this. Again, what I thought it really does interestingly through the plot and the performances and the characters is, yeah, really evoke that sense of thankfulness because Steve Martin clearly has not only a renewed thankfulness for his family by the end of it, by virtue of learning this about John Candy's character, but that's obviously the thing that makes him thankful and really helps him put in everything into perspective so he can kind of laugh at and appreciate everything that's happened. Dell's character is just thankful for this new family that he's gotten. So it does kind of really truly does become really sweet at the end in a way that doesn't feel as forced as it might sound by describing it. But that was like a really happy twist for me. I didn't see that coming. Well, I mean, I kind of predicted that she had passed away. That was not that difficult to predict.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, hey, never stop a locomotive while it's in motion, which is me in a second based on what you just said, which is like how sappy that can kind of come across. And it's worth noting in my mind that part of the reason, like I think maybe a majority of the reason is that doesn't come across as sappy is strictly because of the physical appearance of John Candy and his ability and to like occupy character. His appearance alone, like his physical presence on screen, the way he carries himself, the charm that he has, the wry little smile, and like his willingness to like pour into a big smile or like kind of like, you know, like you can watch that emotion leave his face. Like that's so likable. And so when you just buy that this man has gone through those things, one last thing about the characters, because it's related to the plot, which is, I think like the way that you would sort of summarize the plot of this happens, then this happens, then this happens, and then like putting the analysis of like, well, Act 1 is 30 minutes and Act 2 is 30 minutes and Act 3 is 30 minutes. And there's an incident at the 30-minute mark and then there's a point of no return at the 60-minute, like all of the textbook kind of like, you know, hero's journey, like landmarks. Those things occur also in this film, like just in character interactions. So like that first interaction with the first, I would say like meaningful interaction, like there's like, he takes his cab and then they meet again. And then he falls asleep and takes his shoes off on the plane, yada, yada. But then the first like meaningful interaction is when John Candy, they're in the hotel room and he says what ends up being the title of the new documentary about John Candy, which is I Like Me. Mm-hmm. And that is like that's a plot point and it's a pivotal character moment, which, you know, I think like it's almost worth noting that the characterization in this movie is almost more powerful than the plot line itself on paper, because they're so like they're tied so well together that it's not just about like, you know, action set piece, so on and so forth. It's really the characterization actually is diving the plot around. So I would say it's definitely a strength of the movie.
Yeah, I think it's a really pivotal moment in the film and a really important part of that character's growth. Real quickly, though, got to give a shout out to Kevin Bacon, who is just, I mean, the cameo of all cameos, racing to a taxi against Steve Martin.
Who's never looked slimier ever. You know, this like Wall Street, like New Yorker slick. He's so skinny and his chin is so pointy in this movie. Yeah, it's
He
really
looks he looks like the old. Do you remember when McDonald's had like a late night menu and there was like a moon that played the saxophone?
yeah.
That's what I imagine when I close my eyes and think of him. What would you give the characters and performances in Plane, Trains, and Automobiles?
I'm gonna go because I like him, because I buy it. I'm gonna give him a 9.
Which brings us to visual storytelling. This is where I really am interested to hear your thoughts, because there's a whole kind of range of gags. I mean, there's some like really over the top, silly slapstick gags that are kind of inserted subtly, but then there's some, I mean, really kind of, even from the opening shot is just this sort of canted angle looking up at this skyscraper, and I don't know, there's a lot of subtlety going on, but I guess my real question is, is it too all over the place? Some of the more, at least for me, some of the more slapstick gags didn't really land because I wasn't anticipating that type of humor. This is a rated R film. You know, we're talking about a Thanksgiving movie. I could imagine a lot of people hear these two names and think, oh, this is kind of a family movie. But it's also not a family movie. I mean, it's a rated R film. It was clearly for adults.
Well, Al, I'd never give you so much credit. It's your lion eyes. They don't really work for you so much. So it's no disrespect. It's a species thing.
I only see 3 shades of color. Yeah, it's terrible.
No, I think it's hard to assess. I think I would say, yeah, there's certainly like some faulty execution that you could probably say this could be better, or this didn't land just by nature of the way it was sort of like delivered via the medium. But like I definitely think it does deliver on a few of those moments, like the car gag towards the end where they split the trucks and go right through. And then at one point, like they're cutting to like everybody's screaming and tires are screeching. And then like they're inexplicably skeletons just sitting there with their mouths open. Like that kind of stuff, I think, like obviously is very like compartmentalized in the era and reads as a little bit very dated now. But I think like that kind of stuff, like an obvious attempt strictly at using cinema as the vehicle for the joke. Like clearly he was trying that, and sometimes I think he hit. But I think that's consistent with Hughes's career in general. Like I think Ferris Bueller does a lot of the same things, right? Of like heavy emphasis on character, heavy emphasis on interaction, and like making a person larger than life, but then trying some gags, and the rest of his career too. But with this one in particular, yeah, I mean, it's clear that he was kind of, I don't want to say learning, but I think that they were banking a lot on these performances, obviously first and foremost, and I feel like that was priority number one. So if there was something that was going to slip, it was going to be anything else other than the opportunity for the 2 stars to steal the show. But like I think it's at its best when they're fighting outside, like the culmination of that scene, that car scene I was mentioning, where they get out of the car, they're fighting with each other, and then the car bursts into flames. And then the way they reveal that, if I'm not mistaken, I'm just trying to watch the clip right now to make sure I remember correctly, but it's like they're standing there and they're kind of like coming to peace, and then the first thing you see is just an orange glow and you hear the sound. And that's very like classic Hollywood of like, what, like it's using cinema to help you, because if that's a stage play, you have to see the car and you have to see the talent. When the car bursts into flames, you're going to see it. With this, you completely contain your frame to these 2 gentlemen and they're looking out. So your attention assumes it's beyond, but it's really where you are that the joke is coming from, behind you, and you're revealing that first and foremost with the orange glow. So like, you know, there's savviness. There's certainly expertise there. I mean, the DP, like Donald Peterman.
Yeah.
Yes, Donald Peterman. Men in Black. There's a couple other titles that are very unique and striking and different. So certainly caught him at maybe an early part of his career. And obviously with John Hughes being like, all of his movies kind of tonally fit the same bill.
Sure.
So like I think, you know, Peterman, the DP, kind of working underneath the like clearly taking the direction of John Hughes.
The house style, if you will.
Totally. But yeah, I mean, again, I think does it leave some to be desired? I think only with your strict expectation of excellence, Al.
Hey, that's what I got. I put the REAL and REEL. When there is the moment where the two semi trucks are coming and they drive between them for a brief moment, Steve Martin looks over and John Candy is just dressed as the devil laughing. That actually did make me laugh out loud. I have to amend my earlier statement that I didn't laugh out loud. I thought that was very, very, very funny. So a moment like that really works for me. There's a moment later where it might be. I think it's a different scene. I can't remember, but they're again. Steve Martin has grabbed like the dashboard, and like his fingers have kind of like indented into the dashboard, and they've bent the steering wheel, and that's just where I'm like, see, that to me is like a Naked Gun joke, and it comes just sort of out of nowhere. And so, in certain ways, the absurdity works, and then other ways, it just didn't land as much. And so that's why, like I said, I thought maybe it was a little inconsistent, but it sounds like it wasn't as consistent for your human eyes. Your game with it.
No, I can grant inconsistent. I think like that. I would chalk something like that up to the sort of like, hey man, we're making a Hollywood picture here. We gotta spread it across for all audiences. So if you're not,
Right.
like, what can we do for the folks who aren't buying this? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like some of that comedy is like, well, let's do something more visual. That doesn't rely on Steve Martin or John Candy so much as it does our expertise as filmmakers. But there's one last thing, and it's the same damn scene. I keep harping on that scene, but like I feel like one of the funniest jokes, again, using cinema as the reveal, is after they're laughing, Steve Martin's laughing maniacally as the car is burning down with his wallet in there, presumably other things that like his other possessions. Then the hard cut is that they're still in the car. The car is still being used. They're still on the road, and like that's another funny sort of classic like era appropriate hard cut
Yeah.
of you think one thing, but we're just going to move the plot line right on the other way as if nothing's happening. But therein lies the joke.
Visual storytelling, 1 out of 10. I'm very curious. What do you give it, Keith?
I'll drop in at a 7 on visual storytelling. That's where I'm going to go.
The 7. All right. I mean, your human eyes. I gotta trust them. That brings us to use of sound. I want to get your thoughts on the use of sound, obviously, but there's one in particular I want to mention, which is this sort of like, I don't know, almost like insanity kind of. There's just certain moments, especially early on, where Steve Martin can tell something bad is going to happen and he'll just sort of focus in on something. And there's just this, I don't know, jazzy kind of soundtrack that comes in. And it's, I don't know. It was a little more inspired, I guess, than I thought I was going to find in this. There's obviously quirky sound effects and things, pretty traditional John Hughes soundtrack and score in terms of what you'd think. Very much of the time, kind of very, very much a 1987 sounding score. But I don't know, with that as a primer, what'd you think of the use of sound?
Not as unremarkable a dig. I don't know. I thought like the sounds that I liked were mostly the way that like I agree on the score. The score cracked me up, and like it's funny how as the further you get away from a film, like when it's in that weird, awkward, like it's only been 10 or 15 years, that it just feels dated. It just doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't feel good. It just feels old, like
Recent
weird,
past, yeah.
out of style. But that same, the sort of like those ebbs and flows, and like to get it so far away in the rearview mirror, and then to watch it again with like fresh eyes, and to see how like obviously sincere and authentic they were attempting to be at the time, and using contemporary everything just to, like as a time capsule. Then it feels like it's back very cool and very like effective, at least to me. I liked the score, and like the sappiness at the end. What's this song? It's like every down. Oh, like I was just like, oh my god, like I didn't know that was gonna be the song at the end, and I was like waking my wife up because she had fallen asleep naturally. I was like, hey, you're not gonna believe this. You're not gonna believe this. Check it out. And yeah, so that I thought that was really cool. I think like the use of sound, as far as I would judge it, is like I remember the K's and all the F words that Steve Martin hurled at, like because he went out of his way to emphasize them. I thought hard K's at I can never remember that actress's name. I just say Grace from Ferris Bueller, but because she's doing the same thing. She got that.
Oh, yeah.
On that stuff. Yeah. Nothing struck me as a sort of expert. It sort of did its job as far as I can tell, and tucked away.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, there wasn't anything, like I said, while listening to it or while watching it, that sounded too too inspired. I mean, it just felt like, again, I hate to say paint by numbers because it sounds like more of a dig than it is, but there was plenty going on outside of the soundtrack. But even in the score over the credits, they sort of mix in some like John Candy and stuff. It's very interesting. It's I don't know, like somebody went for it and they tried. So yeah, it's a
I made about that. That's a great. So I'm going back on my own because I don't know. Do we count that during the runtime? I guess we have to, right? Because the credits, the music during the. Made a note. I have like 7 notes I made. Nothing significant. But for one, I put was the music on the credits. I'm like, what the hell are they trying to say there? I'm remembering now with those like it's all those like drops throughout the movie, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like putting tons of reverb in. Okay, take back everything I just said. This movie's a 10 out of 10 on the sounds and use of sounds. No, I mean, that's like, I'm just trying to imagine the scene, right? So it's what, 1987. It's the holiday season and we're in a busy movie theater. This is a hit. Everyone likes this movie. And now I'm walking out of the theater and I'm hearing chatter from all the people and John Candy for some reason, as though he's like the voice of God, like just like sprinkling well wishes to me as I'm leaving the theater.
Yeah, no, it really is such an interesting thing where, like you said, those drops is a very like mid to late 80s sort of thing that people are experimenting with. Reminds me a little bit of like the Bart Simpson rap. So it sounds like that was a 10 out of 10 for sound, and we're amending all other grades before it. But
Hang on, let me take a deep breath, maybe bring it back down to earth here. So what's the actual criteria asking for, or what's on the rubric? What are we assessing?
use of sound, which is obviously a combination of, again, the music and sound effects. Some real crisp Foley in this one, obviously.
I'll go 6. I'll go 6.
Which brings us to the final category, certainly the one I'm often most thankful for, which is themes. I obviously noted some ones that just seem like the core pillars: bad luck, friendship, self-awareness, separation, and maybe thankfulness. That probably seems like an obvious one.
There's a word that's thrown around, which it's supposed to mean like perseverance and like dedication and like willingness to like fight against adversity. But this word, when it's thrown around the athletic scene, is stick-to-itiveness, which I think is just one of the most. It's an insane word, but let's say stick-to-itiveness, right? Which just means, like I said, like perseverance really is the non coach speak version of that. But like perseverance, and I think which you mentioned, but it's like perseverance in the face of work being a nightmare, perseverance in the face of the infrastructure of planes, trains, and automobiles sort of failing people when as inevitably they would, because they're like a miracle in and of themselves, right? And then like perseverance in the face of people just being annoying, because the more time you spend with people, there is that's going to bubble up. So the question is, do you want to continue being friends? And if so, that's going to take work and sacrifice and, dare I say, stick-to-itiveness. And similarly, it's so funny how the wife character in the family is like, he knew he didn't really have time to develop them, but he knew he was like, we were gonna get there eventually, so we had to recognize her face and we had to recognize the kids, and like, so we had to spend a little bit of time with them. And it's like, so he only has a very, very finite amount of time to like build up that character and that whole setup. And so she's just like constantly sort of forlorn and like so sad and like so alone in her bed and like so desperate for her husband to come home, and like, because that's all the time we've got for this character, unfortunately. But even the wife is kind of like dedicated to this, like, despite the adversity, like a willingness to sort of overcome. So like, I think that theme is like, and I think that's latent in the idea of like, I'm going to make a Thanksgiving movie. Well, if I'm going to do that's set in there, and I'm going to try to capsulate the feeling, what should that feeling be? And I think like it's also indicated, maybe the key to all this is that post-credit scene that no one watches, of like, work will literally always be there. Like that stuff will always, like, Kevin Bacon is still on that corner, like hailing a cab, even though it's an Uber these days. But like, everything about the world will sort of stay in its place. And it's on you to like find who you want to spend your time with and what you want to pursue despite all odds and whatever's easier, and I think like that's the attempt, buy or sell. It seemed to me that was obviously the heart of the movie, and it's like really hard to it's hard to attempt something with like sincere earnestness of like true genuine human sentiment of like friendship and togetherness and like choosing to overcome and overlook like incompatibility or just like general annoyances, and like clearly that's underneath all of this like thick layer of comedy and whatnot. So I think like that theme definitely like it seems to me that's where it's at.
I really agree with that I think that perseverance, or again, stick-to-itiveness, really comes through.
Get it right, Al. All right. Get it right. Stick-to-itiveness from here on out.
You got a coach. No problem.
Put me in the game.
Put me in the game. Themes in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, 1 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm a sap, dude. I'm a pushover for this kind of thing. I like movies. I root for movies to be good. I often give movies more credit than certainly you, Al. We can't all be, as we don't all have the exquisite taste. No, I buy it. So I'll go with an 8. I'll give it an 8.
The 8 is locked in. Some might say the hard 8 as a soft preview or something else. But regardless, I appreciate a little Thanksgiving ball busting. So it's all well and good. We have a final score for you locked in, and then I have a score that I can reveal so you can see just how nice or evil of a lion I am. Regardless, you gave the plot a 6, the characters and performances a 9, the visual storytelling a 7, the use of sound another 6, and the theme an 8, for a total of 72, which is technically a B on the Real Talk scale. And it's kind of right in the middle. So up to you, B plus, B minus. You could bump it up to an A. It is a holiday.
In the spirit of giving, I'll give it the push towards the plus. B plus, not an inch further.
May if the Candy Estate is listening, I think they'll have to be happy enough with that. Please leave a comment I
feel like the Candy Estate is doing just fine in the wake of this new documentary that came out.
Yes, it's very true. Well, on that note, I will reveal my score. We're very, very close, as if we indeed were racing towards a cab. I gave to your 6 up the plot a 5.5. Can you believe it? To your 9, I gave the characters and performances a 7.5. So just a little bit further behind, but not far off. Visual storytelling to your 7, I gave it a 6. Use of sound to your 6, I gave it a 6. And for themes, you gave it an 8, I gave it a 7. So I was just a little bit just tailing the whole time. So I gave it a 64 to your 72. I gave it a B minus to your B plus. So again, the Candy Estate or the Martin family, you guys can come after me in the comments because clearly Keith is on your side. I'm incredibly happy that you could come by today and thankful. I'm very thankful for, like I said, the cranberry sauce. I hope you can get some turkey and gravy before you get out of here. Because it's always wonderful to have friends in the jungle, especially when we're reviewing a classic.
Listen, after this, it's full speed towards Christmas. That's all I got to say.
That's right. Well, so listeners know our Real Talk gift guide, our holiday gift guide, may or may not be dropping on all of our social media tomorrow on Black Friday. So make sure you go check that out. Keith, I hope you get stocking stuffers for the whole family from our sponsor, Platinum Plastic, which is on Redbubble, where you can get all of our merch. I'll stop hawking. And again, just thank you so much for coming. Keith, would you mind telling the good listeners where they can check out some of your wonderful work?
Oh, anywhere books are sold. Just kidding. My stuff's on Instagram. You can find me. I guess my tag will be somewhere around here.
We'll have links all over the place, Keith.
Yeah, take one of those links. By the way, I'm first in line for the merch. I just want you to know. All right, Black Friday, here I come.
Thank you so much. We'll make sure you get a good discount. Here's the real question I'll leave you with. Will you come back sometime, Mr. Kennedy, and watch and review another movie with me?
With you, Al, as long as I like the movie less than you did next time, then it's a date. I have to know in advance or I'm not coming.
Before we jump into the next review, I just wanted to thank you for listening this far, and I ask that you leave a like if you're enjoying the show. And let us know what movies you'd like to hear us score on Real Talk. We're almost certainly on your favorite social media platform, so search Al the Movie Lion wherever you scroll.
Beginning with his film Brick, Rian Johnson has directed 7 feature films in the last 20 years, and his last 3 are all within the same universe and star Daniel Craig. It's difficult not to discuss Johnson's career without noting his participation in perhaps the most polarizing Star Wars film of all time, but the real question is, how did he follow it up? Knives Out's plot is a Russian doll of donut holes filled with smaller donuts that could easily be a tragedy of errors, but instead becomes a sickeningly perfect portrait of contemporary America. If that sounds stupid with 2 O's, hear me out. Marta is an American in every way, from being an immigrant who becomes a caretaker to being the recipient of the estate of a man who is the embodiment of the classic American dream. Standing between them is a cornucopia of characters that together are a complete Venn diagram of privilege, entitlement, and unfortunately common points of view. The colorful cast is matched by the production design that loads every frame of this film with purposeful color, clues, and visual metaphors that merge perfectly with the movie's theme, and a final shot that proves Rian Johnson is a master of cinema storytelling. The key to solving Knives Out riddle is the same key to moving forward together as the America we've always been told could exist, and that key is unnecessary kindness and humanity. Tuck your ties and help me welcome back to the jungle a man who himself stabbed me with a prop knife once. So today, Matt Summerstein will both review Knives Out and be subtly questioned. Matt, welcome back, buddy, and happy Thanksgiving!
Happy Thanksgiving, Al. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, it's no problem, and look, let's just get it out of the way. Did you know it was a prop knife, or
That'll be our own mystery. My sources will never tell. I was happy to find out it was a prop knife after the fact, though.
All right, well, that building a little tension right out of the gate. Thank you for coming, especially on the holiday. I know you're a man with many friends and a huge sprawling family, so the fact that you would make time.
Bring my plate of candied yams. I know you're a candied yam lion.
Oh, dude, they smell so great. I was hoping
Oh, yeah.
that's what it is. You've covered them with tinfoil, and I could smell them. I'll have the girls take them and go put them out on the table, and everybody else is hanging out in there.
Perfect.
You know the drill. You've been here before, and we'll dive right into it because I want to get out and eat some turkey and hang out with the rest of the pals and the friends who are here today. When did you see Knives Out for the first time? Did you see it in 2019?
No, I didn't see it in theaters. My first, which is odd, because I was really into the movie, like really like, oh, I can't wait to see this. I guess like first time was 2020, like on a streamer. I don't know why I didn't go see it in theaters, because I was.
Were you burned? Did you feel burned a little by his previous film, Star Wars?
Last Jedi? Last Jedi is before Knives Out.
It is, yes. And I will go on record. Who knows? Someday maybe we'll review it here on the show. I didn't hate that movie. Definitely didn't love it. I was pretty surprised by the reaction to it when people were very, very angry. And I've spent many years hearing about all the reasons people are angry. But I say that so again, you know this is a safe place. But did that influence you at all going into Knives Out?
No, I mean, just because Last Jedi is like, it's a part of, it's its own thing, being, a Star Wars movie. I like it. I don't love it, but I saw it in theaters 2 or 3 times. There's stuff that really works and there's stuff that really doesn't. This was one of like the more fun, like theater going experiences that I can recall, just because I saw it with friends, like either on the Friday or the Saturday that it came out, and packed house at the Union Square Regal, and, just moments of like, whoa with everyone, but also like very laughable moments. And I'm not like a Star Wars like truther. Like I like them, but it's not my, like when people are like, this isn't a Star Wars movie, I'm like, I don't care, like whatever, it's fine. Rian Johnson, I mean, I love Brick and I like Looper a lot, and trying to think, like, did he make anything else that was
I do have the answer to that question.
canon? But no, I mean, he's so slick. He's just
The Brothers Bloom came out between Brick and Looper. So those were the three.
I guess I never saw that.
Pre-Star Wars, and then all Knives Out properties post-Star Wars. Still pending, obviously, the third Knives Out.
Not very well received.
Yeah, I'm looking here on IMDb, 6.7 out of 10. That's not a real talk score, folks. So take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, we got a Mark Ruffalo and an Adrian Brody tossed in with a Rachel Rice. But now we're back into Knives Out. We're all
All Knives Out.
This movie's got one hell of a plot on its shoulders. I said in my open, so I'm going to go back to this throughout because this is the drum I'm going to bang. This movie very clearly seems to me like I said, kind of like a metaphor for contemporary America. I mean, it seems to go out of this way at times to very clearly be that. And so I don't think I'm like breaking any news by thinking that.
No.
About the plot, what I do think elevates it is that metaphor, because I think it works really well as a mystery. It comes with all the right red herrings and various things that you need to make it interesting until the very end. But for me, that is what elevates everything from the casting to the various plot points, because they aren't just operating on one level as it needs to as a plot. It's also perfectly sort of working as its metaphor. Digress. I'll throw it to you, but that, I don't know. I'm just curious. What are your thoughts on the plot?
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, that does kind of bring it to another level. Plotting in general, it's a terrific mystery with all the little bells and whistles of this and this and this, and it comes back, and then, oh, remember he said that, and then, it's a great, Murder, She Wrote type Agatha Christie mystery. And but yeah, the political undertones, especially at that point in time, like when Jacob Tremblay, the son, who's the alt-right troll, as Meg calls him, is like our little Charlie Kirk in the corner, and then Chris Evans calls her, has the SJW degree going. It's a very of the time. Don Johnson with Hamilton, immigrants, they make the country better. Everyone getting she's from Colombia. He says she's from Paraguay. Then she says she's from Uruguay. And yes, the embodiment of the American dream, and Marta doing it the right way, taking care of the old man that is the country. I think it's almost everything we talk about today is going to be a real tip of the cap to Rian Johnson for just making such a tightly wrapped, like perfectly ultra slick, everything, all the pieces add up kind of movie. To me, that can sometimes be a little like annoying when it's that well crafted, but the plot is kind of perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare that you see a cast with this weight and magnitude in a movie that is so clever and has so much to say. And again, a movie that came out this year, Superman, a lot of people, that's a movie that maybe doesn't succeed at interweaving kind of current events so seamlessly.
It's pretty heavy-handed.
Yeah, heavy-handed is exactly how I would and have described it. You could be on any side of the political spectrum and you could see what it's doing and not be offended by it. I also think you could totally miss what it's doing and just enjoy the movie.
Just enjoying it for what it is.
Yeah.
Well, where does Daniel Craig fit into that? Why does he have that foghorn leghorn southern drawl, and Benoit Blanc, what does he stand in his grand metaphor?
I think what I really enjoy about that character is this duality where you have this, again, as James Bond, like everybody who sees is going to recognize him and go, here's this slick, sexy spy. Now let's just do something really silly and over the top. And I think when it comes to how does that impact the metaphor, I do think making him this, as he's referred to as this foghorn leghorn sort of Southern man, I think that creates a duality that, again, is very representative of what America is. A lot of English settlers come here and, fast forward 100 years, they've got a strong Southern accent. And I think that because there's this trifecta, you have Christopher Plummer, you have obviously Ana de Armas, and then you have Daniel Craig, and the three of them really are the pillars of the movie. They're the trifecta of truth and virtue and sort of the heroes and what they represent. And I think that's his leg of it, is where you have the older, like I said, the American dream in Chris Plummer. You have Christopher Plummer. I don't know.
Yes, please.
So, and then you have Ana de Armas, who, like I said, very clearly represents the immigrant. I mean, she's pulled into a scene at one point and labeled as such and has to kind of explain it, but she did it the right way. Her family, quote unquote.
Right. Yeah. You do it the right way.
And so, yeah, I think having that Southern sort of part of the equation is very necessary and often a part And I think a lot of I'm from the South. I'm a Southern lion, and I don't mind saying a lot of Southern history in America is misunderstood. It's not well understood, especially Civil War and post Civil War. I think a lot of people just assume, oh, the South was a bunch of racists. They don't really understand how the economy was built at that time and what people were truly losing and what ended up happening in the wake of that. And so I think if we're creating this sort of colorful portrait of what the sort of beautiful America is. Yes, you do have the older white man in Chris Plummer. You have that balanced out with an Ana de Armas, but then you also do have this very intelligent representation of the South, who really is sort of the linchpin in all this. And so I don't know. To answer your question, maybe in a little long-winded, that's how I think he sort of is a part of that metaphor.
Yeah, where he fits in there.
But he's
with all these choices to like make him do that, you know?
Yeah, and I do think that again, the metaphor is largely contained within the family. So I do think that's kind of how I see him fitting in, but I don't necessarily think, like I said, he's actually the biggest part of it, despite being the consistent thread in all these movies. And also, well, we'll stick to plot. And I'll get a score out of you in just a second, and then we'll jump into characters and performances because there's a lot to talk about there. You did mention how it does come together very neatly. I mean, it does come together in this like super perfect way. And I was okay with that. And I was okay with that again, because at that point in the movie, even the first time I saw it, I had accepted it as metaphor. You know, I think that if this was like an Ocean's 11 style movie, it would be, I don't know that I would be so accepting of it, because I don't know that a movie like that, which I love, by the way, I don't think that that's meant to be anything deeper than what it is just being on screen.
Yeah, just a slick, beautiful movie.
But how do you feel about that? Was it a little too neat for you? Was the stabbing at the end too much? I don't know. I'm just curious, because for such a smart, clever movie, there is a lot going on in those last couple minutes.
Yeah, I'd say the last third isn't as good as the first two parts, like especially like with the reveals with each. She has like the invisible ink thing, and you know, it's kind of when they go to meet Edie Patterson and she's like, I know what Hugh did, you know, that kind of. I don't love all of it. It doesn't all add up, and there's things earlier in the movie that also to me are like, okay, like I don't love it, but I do think it works. On a plot, I mean, I'd give it like a 9 out of 10 though.
All right, letting me know. I didn't even have to ask. That's why let me
jump bro that. Yeah, I know what we're doing here. Well, I got those yams I'm trying to get.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm still waiting for the girls to come grab them, put them in the oven. Get cold. Well, we're transitioning now. We're talking about characters and performances. I want to talk about Chris Evans at this point in the show. And if you've gotten to this is episode 15. So talk about things I was thankful for. That he didn't call it quits.
Still going, man. Still going strong.
Some say stronger than ever, not my doctors. Anyway, they're questioning all of this. Spoilers. That's what I'm going to say. We're going to reveal now the killer. We're going to reveal now the culprit. We didn't quite there in plot, but we're talking about characters and performances. And I think, again, this is maybe the most profound part of the metaphor. And what I would say a lot of this movie is a bit of meta casting. Chris, which one is he? Which Chris is he?
Chris Evans.
Thank you. Chris Evans, it turns out to be the bad guy, the culprit. And again, he's Captain America. And I think that there's something really clever about that, especially when we consider this metaphor that I've mentioned and that we.
Oh, yes. Captain America.
The ultimate sort of, again,
embodiment of American virtue.
Yeah, a MacGuffin, if you will, where it's supposed to be this and it turns out to be that. A sleight of hand. A MacGuffin, typically, an object. So maybe that's the, but again, So I really appreciate that. And I do think there's something to that supports the argument. But this is such a huge cast from Christopher Plummer and Daniel Craig and Chris Evans. Jamie Lee Curtis, Don Johnson. Of course, we have Frank Oz who pops in.
I know Frank Oz, Pete Stanfield, Michael Shannon,
Michael Kors, Toni Collette.
I'm a huge Toni Collette fan, not so much in this movie, but in everything else. I think Toni Collette is one of our best actresses, and not our, but one of the best actresses working today.
No, she is exclusive to Real Talk.
Oh, and shit, Miss M. Emmett Walsh. I'm a huge R.I.P. I'm a huge M. Emmett Walsh guy. Glad to see him in there.
Yeah, no, that was really fun when he popped up.
So old, jeez, or he was so old,
Yeah.
but he'd never die.
His eyebrows are like a redwood tree.
I know,
Just
right?
never
It's
stops
really-
growing. They're incredible. I think they're still growing. R.I.P.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, no, just a really incredible cast. This is 2019, so this would have been 2 years after The Shape of Water. So cool to see Michael Shannon, who really again knocks it out of the park in that.
Love Michael Shannon. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just has so much dimension, and in this again is a really fun role, because that's what's cool about this movie is really does play somebody with a lot of dimension and layers, and you don't always see that when you have this many characters and this many big names.
It is a lot. It is a lot. I would say he's my favorite of the main family. Like his both his performance and his character and all that. Not that he's my favorite of character, but I just think he is the best of the complete A-list top to bottom Thromby / Drysdale family. Chris Evans too. Chris Evans is actually great, but he's kind of his own thing.
But he's kind of one note, and not that it's not a knock on him. Yeah, he's just this sort of defiant asshole who, the only kind of shift is when he's a bit desperate at the end. And but yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Michael Shannon gets to cut this like great promo on Chris Evans's ransom when they're at the will reading, and it's
right up.
what a great
shot looking up at him.
Yeah, it just
It's funny. He
carries it.
He's good. He's good.
Yeah, no, let me ask you, what'd you think of the supporting police officers, Lieutenant Elliott, and of course, our main man,
Noah
Wagner, who's Noah Segan.
Yeah, I like them. I like that he's a big fan of the canon of Christopher Plummer's work, of Harlan's work. Lakeith Stanfield, I'm a big fan of his, but he's very kind of, he's like conduit of the audience, kind of like asking the questions and keeping us in line. But I do think that they're a nice duo. They don't do too much. They don't have that much to do.
I will say they were the only, specifically Lieutenant Elliott was the only character, and again, this has nothing to do with the performance, it was just how the character was written. It did feel a little unnatural. There were times that he was just saying and doing things, and I'm like, this doesn't seem like this thing that someone would do, or even a lieutenant would do in this situation. It was just totally exposition, like
it's expository.
Yeah, and so I just have to note that because although there's more than enough performances and characters in this to make up for it, I do have to note that because that was a little bit of a drawback. I do want to quickly see where this falls in Ana de Armas's catalog in terms of like timeline.
Well, she's in Blade Runners before this. Wow.
Yeah.
And then War Dogs and Hands of Stone.
Okay, so she definitely had a handful of things under her belt on the state side before she did.
Yeah.
But
she was like learning English in the movies.
Yeah, which is
famously.
I did know that going in, and I don't think I appreciated it as much last time watching it this time. In particular, the scene in the first act, or I guess sometime in the second act, actually, it's around the halfway point, which is a really clever thing they do in the plot where they kind of reveal this misunderstanding, halfway through that really recontextualizes everything. When she mixes up the medicine, her reaction to that is you're like, oh, she's an actress. Like she's a really good actress.
She's a very good actress in this. She really kind of nails it throughout. Very real.
Yeah, really natural performance in a movie full of very colorful characters.
Over the top.
Yeah, and she grounds it in a way. And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up she has this condition.
The puking disorder of Can't Tell a Lie.
Yeah, that was an interesting.
Yeah, that was a weird choice
thing. Again, depending on your reaction, some people, if they see somebody bleed, that makes it. Some people, when they watch someone throw up, it's not easy.
Yeah, they throw up. Yeah.
Again, Ransom, Chris Evans's character, gets it right in the face at the end, and that one, I've seen this movie a few times, and I never remember that coming.
Yeah.
That got me. Well, all that said, from puking to Captain America doing a heel turn, characters and performances, what do we give it? 1 out of 10.
I'll go 9 again, just because I don't like some of the characteristics of some of the characters. I think I think Jamie Lee Curtis is like too over the top. I think
Okay.
Toni Collette is too over the top. They don't really do much with Ricky Lindhorn or Jacob Tremblay or Jaden Martell. You know, they don't.
Oh,
And there could have been more from both of them because I do think that they're both good performers. Meg is a little too. I don't know. So I'd say 9 out of 10. But you do have great people here. I think Don Johnson's really good in it. It's like a kind of a scummy like Republican conservative. But yeah, Michael Shannon kills it, and I mean the leads are all terrific. Christopher Plummer is like at the top of his game, just like weaving this story in real time as he tells her everything that they need to do and all that. And
oh yeah,
it's very good. Yeah,
he's the man. By the way, you mentioned
this would be quite an effective form of method of murder. I do say I'm going to write a story.
no, I thought he was great. And Don Johnson, you mentioned earlier, but when he says that line, or he's so proud of himself for quoting Hamilton, that I laughed. So I know I laughed at that joke.
I love that he points it out to just see what I did there. He like winks at Noah's saying and Noah's like it's like
He's like a fanboy throughout the whole movie. It's funny.
No, I really, really thought that was funny. All right, visual storytelling. This is, again, a movie that has a lot going on. It takes place in one location for the most part. We get out of it a couple times. But it's largely one house. This is an old house with big old mansion, big estate. Every room has a completely different vibe, color, wallpaper.
Incredible production design.
Yeah, and it is so packed full. I mean, you pause this at any given moment. There's
millions of little winks and Easter eggs and things to pick up on.
There's a moment, and it's escaping me which time, because there's a lot of like flashbacks to the same moment, and it is different. But they pan down. There's like this stuffed. I think it's like a jaguar like chasing a rabbit or something, and it just kind of comes down from that into the scene. And there's different points where there'll be a knife in the foreground again as Christopher Plummer's talking.
Yeah, as he's telling the story, they do have that foreground out of focus knife going across his neck.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's just all these, I don't know,
it's so slick. It is so slick. Like Rian Johnson being like, look what I can do. In literally every shot, everything is intentioned. I loved when Meg was on the phone and she walks into the framing and it's just the light on her eyes and like, yeah, we know you went to film school, bro. Like, but it works. It all really works. No, it's such like a hearty. I mean, and it's funny that we're talking about it on Thanksgiving because even though it's not a Thanksgiving movie, it does just have that like holiday kind of both like in the movie as well as. I will always kind of watch this movie around the holidays. It's family gathering. It's in that canon of like, I watch Lord of the Rings on Christmas always. I like to watch Hateful Eight around the holidays too. I don't know why. And it's like, it's just one of those, both in the movie and in the real world, and the meta-ness of it really all kind of comes together.
Oh, totally. And look, I mean, cards on the table. If anybody's been wondering why I made it into the Thanksgiving episode, it's because, like I said, I do think this is a perfect portrait of contemporary America. And Thanksgiving is I know our friends up north have an earlier Thanksgiving they celebrate, but it's a very obviously American holiday, and I thought this would be a good choice. But vibe-wise, yeah, I mean, anybody who's got a big family, when you get together with everybody, if you don't end up having a scene that's similar to something in Knives Out, I don't know. Yeah, you're either way too healthy or way too unhealthy. Because I hear what you're saying, and I think that. Again, I a lot of times when I'm watching this movie, I think of a movie like the early Wes Anderson, The Royal Tenenbaums.
Oh, Royal Tenenbaums, yeah.
When I watch this movie, it does make me think of the Royal Tenenbaums, the house, the different family, the characters. But again, there is a whimsy to this movie with the camera moves, and there's such a. Again, if Wes Anderson is this like minimalist, then this is like the other extreme of that, where you're walking through this house and it feels like you're in an Applebee's sometimes. I mean, it's just shit everywhere. Yeah. And, but at the same time, like, again, it works. Like, you kind of do start to get a sense of where you're at. When you're in a little secret room above everybody. It's interesting, even the different characters when you start to see their rooms and how they reflect them. And I don't know, it's just
big like knife. Circular as they're asking the questions. One of my favorite shots in the movie is after they read the will. When she comes outside, he literally takes the camera off the tripod for a handheld and you can see it like come up off the tripod, and it turns into this like very frenetic handheld shot. And I was like, oh, I remember the first time seeing it, like, ooh, that's pretty fucking clever there. The world is like, off its axis at this moment. So it's such a tight film. Gotta hand it to the pre-production team and him really.
Very intentional frames from, like you said, the camera movement to what you're seeing within it. And with, again, a movie with so many characters and so much going on, it's just like, nope, we're still filling up the frame. I mean, it is just bubbling. The pot is bubbling. 1 out of 10, how many bubbles would you give it?
I'll give it a 10. I'll give it a 10 on visual storytelling.
I think that's fair. I think that's very fair.
There's a couple of shots in the very beginning, and someone once told me, like, your first shot should tell your story, like, in a nutshell. And it opens, I think, on the coffee mug, and then a bunch of quick cuts around other things. And I was a little bit like, oh, what does that mean, sort of? But, so
it opens on a shot of the house.
Oh, the house, right.
And the dog's running in slow motion, which it's funny that you say that because I did really think a lot about that this time. What I was like, who are the dogs? What is this? Like, because I do think there's something very tonally to it. By the way, you mentioned that coffee mug. It's a great coffee. It's a great coffee mug. I'll cut that out. Al doesn't do that impression. Not on Thanksgiving. He does that. That coffee mug is available in our merch shop right now.
Oh, okay.
Platinum Plastic does all of our merch. Al calls him up when he sees a movie and he says, God damn it, make it. And they make it. And you can go right now. Tomorrow we're dropping our Black Friday merch catalog on all our social channels. So maybe it'll be in there. Maybe it won't. We just watched this today. Maybe it won't be in the catalog, but you should go check it out. So I had to plug that, but that is in there. But yes, early on, you were talking about the shots. I totally derailed that. Continue.
No, it's okay. That was just like one thing that I was like, what are we saying here? But, it sets the scene. Giant house and, Americana and all that. The animals. We're all animals. Whatever. Extended metaphor I'm getting at here.
Well,
I give it a 10. I give it a 10.
The 10 is locked in. I just want to point out that it does bookend really well, though. We see the house at the beginning. It's mysterious. You don't know much about it. You see the wolves running up. And at the very end, it now belongs to Anna Dash. She's Marta's AI, and she's... Because I think the last shot is her face, right? It's her looking at them. So it does come full circle in some ways. What I want to ask you about now is the use of sound. If there is one category of these 5 that I will say does feel a little understated, does feel rightfully kind of reserved, it would be the use of sound. This movie doesn't have a score you're going to walk away humming like that Star Wars thing. That's got one hell of a theme. But this movie, again, it has an appropriate soundtrack.
Yeah.
There when it needs to enhance certain things. But
it's kind of just like boilerplate murder mystery, like da-da-da, da-da-da. But yeah, it's not like a melody that's going to stick in your head, but it does the job. When they're doing the will reading, there's a zoom in on her, and there's like or like some sort of like, big action. I remember the first time I saw it, and obviously again, the use of songs, there's not too many, but when they're in the restaurant and she told him the whole story, Sundown by Gordon Lightfoot plays, and You Better Take Care If I Find You've Been Creeping Around My Back Stairs. It's pretty right on point. That's another one of those, like, look, the song's all the story of the song.
No, that's
the singing. That was one that like stuck out to me from the first screening. I mean, it's slick. It's slick in all ways. But no, there isn't like a score that... It is the most understated part of the whole movie. And I can't think of there's too many other songs. There's the Joni's dancing and trying to get Jamie Lee Curtis to like dance with her, but I don't think the song is anything of note. Yeah. And I'm not sure that there are too many other needle drops. There's probably a song at the end, but I can't remember what it is. Like with the final montage of like everything together. But
even when I'm singing, it's more of just like kind of
the score.
Yeah, it's just it's not really. And I think, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm beating up the movie, but just so much of the film is really clever. I don't know that I would describe the use of sound as clever. I think it's effective. It's not really elevated in the way that with the exception of the track you just mentioned. I mean, that's a great Easter egg. It's a very appropriate and, clever use of a song. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I don't have a ton of takes on it. Like I said, I appropriate is really probably is
it works.
I could say. I love going back and listening to soundtracks. I can't imagine ever like throwing this one on.
Not this one.
I walk around listening to the Lighthouse soundtrack. I don't know what that says about
Great soundtrack. It's a great soundtrack.
Thank you. All right, thank you for.
That actually does a big part in telling the story. I mean, I love that movie.
The Lighthouse made it. It's the only movie Al has given a 100 to on this show.
Oh, okay.
Oh, before I turn off all the listeners, use of sound, how appropriate.
Let's give it a 9. Let's give it a 9.
The 9 is locked in, which brings us to the themes of this movie. I think I've been pretty consistent that I feel like the running theme in this is sort of painting a portrait of America, but there's obviously lots of other themes in this movie. Deceit, family, inheritance, just
money, greed.
And even will, like the will of an individual, how far will we go? The literal living will that you someone else, but just the kindness and the will of people. I think those are themes that are explored. But I mean, you could argue at one point that almost every member of the cast represents a different theme. So it is packed full of them. You've seen it a handful of times. It's Thanksgiving. I might as well ask you, what was there maybe one that resonated with you most this last time watching it that really stood?
I don't believe what we've talked about thus far about like America and the American dream and immigration and the state of the country and things like that at that time. They even they reference Trump at some point. They don't say it by name, but they talk about we needed an asshole in charge and do things the right way and all that. So I would say thematically, we talked a lot about it in the plot, but I would say it's pretty tight in its themes and they're all over this place. And then what you just said, each character kind of representing something different. It makes me think of like the 7 deadly sins or something like that, or it's theme laden. It's full of strong thematic elements.
I think that it's very self-aware, and a lot of times you can have a movie that has a lot of themes, but it doesn't have control of those themes. Okja, another movie that was reviewed recently on the show. Lila, poor girl, she did not like having to sit through that one. Nor did I. But that's a movie that is it has so many themes and has a total identity crisis as a result of it. This movie is the exact opposite. Tons of themes, totally knows how to balance who to give them to, where to represent it. And I think achieves exactly what it's trying to do thematically. What do you give it, 1 out of 10?
Yeah, I give that a 10.
The 10 is in, which means we've got all the scores locked in for
baby
Matthew Summerstein.
Time for review.
It's time to hear
my highest rated of the episodes I've done thus far.
There's one that I don't want to mention because it hasn't come out yet.
Oh, okay.
So I'm thinking that might be just as high or higher. But regardless, plot, you gave it a 9. Characters and performances, you gave it a 9. Visual storytelling, you gave it a 10. Use of sound, you gave it a 9. Themes, you gave it 10 for a total of 94. A plus. What do you want to give this, man?
Call it an A. I would think it's an A movie.
The A is in. You're gonna. Thanks. I said I was thankful for you.
Yeah.
You're gonna see in a minute just how thankful I am for Princeton to you. The plot to your 9, I gave it a 9.5.
Oh, right. The decimals. I forgot about the decimal points.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, that changes.
Anything's possible.
It's all locked in. You can't change anything. 9.5 for plot. Characters and performances, I actually gave it a 10. I do agree that there's some underdeveloped stuff, but I think the characters that you do get into performances knock it out of the park. At least 4 that really were awesome for me. Gave it a 10. Visual storytelling, I actually gave it a 9.5 to your 10. I do think the frames at times can feel a little bit cluttered. There's just, I've watched this movie multiple times and I still have a hard time deciding what to look at. And so I think it's great, but 9.5 out of 10. Complain if you want. Use of sound, I gave it an 8 to your 9. Theme, I indeed gave this movie a 10 out of 10 because I think it is absolutely kind of an example of what it's trying to be and talk about. It's really aware of that. And like I said, with the meta casting, I think that it's just All that said, my total was a 94 to your 94. Thanksgiving
For similar minds.
exactly, and I
Thanksgiving's high. Let's break that wishbone. Or whatever. I don't know. I don't fucking know.
hey, I was gonna say I almost made candied yams, and then I didn't. And what gave me
Just many. You can have too many.
It's true.
Or synced.
It's true.
My favorite side dish.
Anytime I've posed a question to you, you know, listeners won't know this, but you close your eyes because you're so pensive, and while you've been doing that, I've been swiping some of the candied yams. So yeah, you might have
They're here for.
you might see that my mane has gotten progressively sticky.
You got marshmallows in there.
My apologies. I'm a mess. Look,
Yeah, you're hosting. I'm just happy to be here.
that's right. Well, it's always great to have you here. You're one of our most what's the word I'm looking for? Returned guests. I don't know. Returned. Can I make up a word?
Yeah, there you go. That works.
One of our most consistent, loyal, steady guests. How about that? I always love having you here. I'm so happy that you would come on this, the day of thanks. And I know you'll come back because we might not have some things because
We already have the episode in the can.
But this was phenomenal, and you're a good friend. If you ever have a holiday podcast, I'm there for you. Okay.
Absolutely.
Count
on it.
In the meantime, be well, and
Likewise.
and check your morphine vials. Okay.
It's easy to mix those two up.
I don't want any mistakes. All right, let's get into this these candied yams. Thanks for listening, and here's a look at the scoreboard from our show. Lila graded Silver Linings Playbook an 84 and an A to my 87 and A with an 85.5 A average. Keith Kennedy scored Planes, Trains, and Automobiles a 72 and a B plus to my 64 and B minus with a 68 B average. Finally, with the top score on today's show, Matt Summerstein scored Knives Out a 94 and an A to my 94 and an A with, that's right, an average of 94 and an A. A big thank you to Lila for swooping in once again. Support Keith Kennedy by following him on Instagram, and thanks to Matt Summerstein, who you should follow on YouTube. Join us next time on episode 16, Wrestling Movies. From Cheap Heat with Peter Rosenberg, Stat Guy Greg debuts to review The Wrestler. Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics joins me to grade Beyond the Mat. And Lila is back again to score The Iron Claw. Thanks to the team at Real Digital for producing this episode, and Platinum Plastic, who supplies our show's merchandise on redbubble.com. If you haven't left a comment by now, you might as well, and subscribe to the channel as well as hit the bell icon to be notified when Real Talk drops each week. Thanks for listening, and if you're going to talk movies, make sure it's Real Talk.
What were the overheard words by the Nazi child masturbating in the bathroom?